to talk. That makes a difference.
I can hear you.
One thing at a time. Just got to get the power on the right so I can turn on my light.
Lights, camera, action.
All right. How you doing? So do I have a claim? I don't know. I don't think I've talked to you before, Reid. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Did you see my list of discussion questions somewhere up there with the post-it notes? Should be way up in the chat somewhere. I'll try to link it again.
No, I didn't.
Copy the link and put it on the bottom. Might have to click on View Original to see the writing up close if you zoom in.
Hey, oh yeah, those are pretty. Oh, there we go. Justice.
Hello. Oh, sweet.
Is it ethical to limit immigration to preserve a culture? Interesting.
That's a good one.
Want
to talk about that one?
Yeah, I can go with that one. I'm going to say it is not ethical to limit immigration to preserve culture. That's going to be my stance. Yeah.
All right, let's try to define the words a little bit better up front. We can, before we go to the confidence, is it ethical to limit immigration to preserve a culture? I assume limit immigration means to keep a certain amount of people immigrating to the country at a limit in terms of the number of people. Is that the best way to define that? How would you define it?
Well, that's definitely part of it. What came to mind was a study I read where the Netherlands, which has a very open immigration policy, had to look into how they were going to best integrate a large population of religious people into their culture, which is very secular. And how do you keep cultural identity and still have a large influx of people that have differing views? So that's kind of what drew me to that question.
Okay.
Does that? I think I kind of went on a tangent, but did that answer what you were saying? What was your question again?
I'm trying to define what we mean by the words up front. So limiting immigration, sure. I assume for the Netherlands, they allowed a certain amount of people per year to immigrate from wherever, and limiting would be to reduce that to a certain number, I assume, to a certain year.
I think wherever is a little bit myopic as of a term, but yeah, pretty much. There's different amounts of people that are coming from different areas of the world. Of course, those places where people are actively fleeing, of course, are the ones that are going to be having the highest amount of immigration need. So they would probably get priority.
Gotcha. And then to the preserving a culture bit, what does that mean to you more specifically?
Yeah. Um, well, that's I guess another reason. That's the main thing that I am taking the negative stance on that, because I think culture is not something that is static. So how do you preserve a culture if it's always something that's dynamic? So maybe it's I'm more taking offense to the wording of or the idea behind the question, that a culture is
It seems like
something that is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it seems like you're saying there's a contradiction in the question because a culture is not a static thing. It's always evolving. So preserving a culture seems to be kind of a wrong way to think about culture.
Yeah, non sequitur, sure.
Maybe instead of preserving a culture, the right way to phrase it would be preserve certain values, a certain set of ideas and values.
Well, yeah, you don't want to overstress the system, the social system, in like if you look at France or you look at Pakistan right now, these are where I see this is really kind of failing. The integration of different cultures is not going very well, at least in France. I mean, Pakistan just I find really scary when I'm hearing about the beheadings and such. So
Yeah, that's an example where people in France might be considering this question a little bit more often than people in the U.S. maybe, at least right now. So it's like they're thinking, should we limit immigration from, I guess, Muslim majority cultures and countries in order to preserve their culture in France? And that's causing tension in France, potentially. What do you?
Yeah, I mean,
that's like
Morocco and
real
France have
example
had a very. There's been a flow of people across the to those places for a long time. So yeah, it's kind of it's been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, so
Even more so now.
If we were French citizens and there was something up to a vote where they were asking the public to vote on increasing immigration or decrease immigration, what I'm hearing you say is we should increase immigration even from Muslim majority countries.
No, I'm saying that the preservation of culture is not should not be a deciding factor. It's if again. So how do you you need to define culture? So when I see a increase in violence, I would say that's a breakdown in the social environment. I don't know if I would call that the culture, because an increase in violence does not necessarily have to do with eating baguettes. I'm being very pedantic here, and drinking good wine.
Yeah, it seems like religion is a subset of culture, and religion is the key factor. Like some would have for limiting immigration in France, I would assume. But it's like preserving the culture. That's part of the question. What kind of culture is being preserved if we limit immigration? Is that even connect at all? I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I live in a sanctuary city, so there's I have a very wide variety of food that I can choose from. Very close proximity, because there's been people that have been immigrating when needed to my city throughout time. There's Vietnamese. That some of the best Vietnamese I found is really close at hand, and same with Ethiopian. in that way, the culture of this, which there is some integration, but I mean, a lot of little isolated pockets of people. I see that a lot here. Is that a culture? But I see all these people also intermingling and getting on with their day just fine. So
Gotcha.
here it's strange for me to see it, to hear about it in other places, when it does that type of. There's other concerns in the U.S. cities, I think, right now. So maybe that's what it is.
Okay.
Again, I think I'm just losing any track of your questions.
Yeah, it seems like the main issue is the preserving of culture bit of the question. Just taking, if we wanted to preserve a culture for some reason, why would someone want to preserve a culture? Because people are seeing the country change in values. Certain people are starting to do things that are different from the traditional culture. So new things are happening. New values are
new things or old
introduced.
things that we had already taken care of or gotten past are now maybe raising, such as bigotry and tribalism. But you know, it's
if we had the ability to preserve the culture in the U.S. right now, would there be any harm for that? Or preserve the culture in France? If we had a way to
I mean, it's like it's a snapshot in the time that I've seen. What I would have observed of culture in the U.S. is definitely changed over the past 40 years. Maybe 30 years. I could say I had an understanding of what things had the gestalt of the U.S. Is where we're at now better than where we were 20, 30 years ago? I don't know. I think
there's a lot of
where
things that have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And I don't know. I think definitely. I'm hopeful, but I'm hoping that the change that I'm hoping to see upcoming in the next 8 years, let's say, might be more like the earlier part of the decade or century, less like the last 4 or so.
Did you ever watch Mythbusters?
I think so. That was with Tommy and
on Discovery Channel, where they would test myths about various things.
The two guys, Tommy Chang was on it. Yeah.
Tommy Chang, was he?
Wasn't he?
It was Adam Savage and
Adam Savage. Yeah.
Amy Heineman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like after they would test something, and they would get like a busted version of the myth. So if we go through this question of like, no, we should not limit immigration to preserve a culture, that claim has been busted. In Mythbusters, they would usually then try to do something that would make the claim true, like make it not bust.
How do you change the claim, or how do you change? In what way? What would they
what
change
would
to
need
make
to be
it?
true? What would need to be true in the world? How would the world need to be different in order for the claim to be accepted by the majority of people? You
Okay.
can think of even wildly implausible changes in the world. What would need to be different about the world in order for this claim to be mostly accepted by people?
Just to be clear, this claim, that's my position or the claim as it's written.
The claim as it's written.
Okay.
However you define the words.
So
what would need to be
Well, it's
different
a question.
about the world in order for us as a society to preserve our culture?
That it would be ethical
Right.
to limit immigration to preserve culture, right?
Yeah, and immigration would be the best way to preserve it.
If the if your ability to do the most good would be impacted without the limit, then I think you would have to put limits. And so there has to be some limits. But so yeah, just when what's that? I could say it's a balancing act or it's on a gradient. Is have as much immigration as possible while still preserving the things that you find positive or helpful for the entire culture. Yeah, I mean, so if some cultures have living legends or living treasures, excuse me, so somebody would work all their life just to learn one skill, and that would be the embodiment of that skill. These are mostly art, things like that. So that's if, say, immigration were to be to a point where the resources to be able to keep that tradition alive of having living treasures, and the society felt that was intolerable, then it would make sense to limit the immigration.
So like some people in the society have certain skills that's part of a culture, and more immigration came in and that caused those people to no longer be able to practice those skills or something. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, you'd lose the skills, you'd lose the tradition of handing down those skills. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
If
would that be?
This is all under the assumption, though, that immigration is a net negative in value or in production. So just notice that.
Yeah. Does immigration influence culture?
Yes.
Okay. And it influences culture. Does the rate of immigration change culture faster the more immigration? Is that a correlation? That's true. I would assume so.
I see that there might be change of culture, of course, is going to be over time. So if you're looking longitudinal, they'll need to have a large enough population to support the dance center that is focused on the traditions of the cultures that are coming in, or the traditions that are coming in, or the so there's a Catholic Church which is a Greek Orthodox Catholic Church, which has a group of Orthodox or Greek dancers that are local to the area that probably go to that church, and it's part of their culture is this Greek, and where they are able to perform it is at that church. So if you have enough influx of new people, would that dilute that culture, that the ability to hold on to that portion of their past? I don't know. Problem, maybe.
Are there any historical examples of a large influx of people influencing the culture to such a degree that it's unrecognizable due to the immigration?
I don't know. Good question.
I don't know either. Well, what's the largest immigration? What's the largest amount of people moved over a short amount of time that's ever happened in history? I assume it's possibly after World War II, maybe, or World War I. I have no idea. I'm bad. My history is not good enough for that question.
Yeah, you're right.
Like it'd be nice to be able to find that historical example and.
Yeah, but I mean, and I'm sure that there's been large movements of populations in Asia and in Southeast Asia and in the steppes and the back for thousands of years. I'm sure populations, are big numbers, but the percentage of total population also can be a different way of looking at it too. So, yeah.
So
I mean, so like if you think about like the older times when there was city states, then I would say, I mean, if you the influence of the Roman Empire, I could see that as as a large influx of culture across a large area.
Maybe if Native Americans before Europeans got here had this question in mind, like, oh, you're a bunch of Europeans are coming here. Mm-hmm. I guess it's not so much. Would they prefer to limit immigration from Europe in order to preserve the culture? Now, if we took like a tribe from back then to right now and saying, well, if this happens, this is going to happen. It's going to be basically genocide and a bunch of people being killed by disease. And your culture is going to be basically, on very small pockets of land on this whole continent. Would you prefer that not to happen? So now we take them back in time. They've seen the future. They know what's going to happen.
Couldn't see it. It's right in front of my face. You're completely right.
To limit immigration to preserve that culture. It's like, I would assume they would say yes. That would seem to be fair to say yes at that point for that question.
Yeah, obviously so.
Good. So that's maybe that's a historical example.
I think you had hit a nail on the head there. That could be a very good. Definitely.
And is any situation like that analogous today, where we need to do any type of limiting of immigration?
I think of the immigration that's going on today is from more third world countries towards first world countries, where with the empire building, that the colonization of the U.S. or the Americas, it's more of a first world country imposing on third world countries, moving into new territory. So
since some first world countries colonized third world countries, it's only fair that those people would be able to immigrate to the first world countries that cause such problems.
I think
Is that what
it
you're
has
saying?
less to do with the ability to disrupt is different.
What do you mean?
Like you said, in the colonization,
Third world countries
of
don't have the power to disrupt the culture like the first world countries did to the third world ones.
Yeah.
They don't have the resources and power to do that. So it's not too much of a threat for changing the culture of the colonizing first world countries.
Exactly.
Basically, anywhere that's being immigrated, having a high degree of immigration, there's really no threat of like a serious change of culture because they're so powerful and prevalent. And the rate of immigration is not even close to being something that we should worry about that happening.
Yeah. I guess I just come back to that culture is something that changes over time. And with the advancement of technology and stuff, it's just going to be changing at a faster and faster pace. So
We should
having again, strong cultural identity is not something that I really have a strong feeling for. I don't want to say identity too. So, yeah. So, as someone who has a much stronger cultural identity, may have a different view on that.
Okay, cool.
I was never
questions about
a
this?
team type thing. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Sweet.
So,
any questions for me?
But I'll ask your position on the statement or the question.
I would say I don't know too much about immigration at all, and I don't have enough information to have a good enough opinion about it. So I would be, my intuition is like very, it should be very low that it is ethical due to our context and time period here. I don't see it as much of a threat, although I could hypothetically come up with things. I could come up with hypothetical things that could change my mind, but I don't know how realistic they are to happen in this day and age. So I don't think it's ethical at this point. There's plenty of room. There's plenty of resources. The more people, the better the economy. So, but I still don't know too much about the effects of immigration or the benefits and cons. I could probably look into it more. So I don't know.
Fair.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. I think it's about 4 o'clock. Yeah, the 4 o'clock show right now. Thanks again. Your name is all pixelated.
Malty.
What is it? Malty. Thanks, Malty, for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to be back probably on Friday. And if we get any more downtime, I'd love to chat more about something else.
Go ahead. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.